we've covered the big issues, but there's one issue we haven't covered in this global search for humanity's future, and that's the Oscars. I'm sure you've been asking yourself since last Sunday night. You had your own opinions about the Oscars, but I'm sure you've been thinking to yourself obsessively, yeah, those Oscars were good, or those Oscars were bad, or I agree, or I don't agree. But whatever your thoughts were, I'm sure you've been asking yourself, what did Eskow think about them? Uh, you weren't asking yourself that? Okay, we'll let that go. And I'll tell you anyway. Okay, here's where we go with the Oscars. Here's what struck me about it. I mean, a lot of things struck me. I'm like you. I have a lot of opinions about what was or wasn't the best movie of the year. But in general, I didn't have any big unhappiness. But something struck me about the Oscars as a sort of symptom of the zeitgeist or the planet nowadays, and that's this. Okay, there were two films that were once heavily favored to win. American Hustle was supposed to walk away with it based on early results and early discussions, and Wolf of Wall Street. Now, both American Hustle and Wolf of Wall Street were shut out, which in Hustle's case was amazing because it had 10 nominations. Of the 10, zip. Wolf of Wall Street, 5 nominations. Also, nothing. So, and a lot of you have seen that image that's going around the internet of it's a photograph of Leonardo DiCaprio, who was a star of Wolf of Wall Street, wrestling with Matthew McConaughey over the Oscar, and someone had written underneath it, "Give me back my," I can't remember. That's my Oscar you've got there or something. I thought McConaughey was great. DiCaprio's great. What strikes me is, the Academy. The voting members of the Academy are people who read the zeitgeist for a living, right? They want to know what the public mood is because they want to make movies that capitalize on it. They also have moods of their own. They reflect it. So I was wondering, okay, why is it that the two, and by the way, I was the only guy, I only did Oscar predictions once. I think it was 2006. I got them almost all right, including the upset victory of Crash over some of the other nominees. I just nailed it, and then I thought I better quit while I'm ahead. No predictions this year, but I did wonder why those movies got shut out. Obviously, there's a lot of politicking back and behind the scenes stuff, but what really struck me about it was, okay, let's think for a second here. Find both movies with financial themes. Both have to do with fraud. One has to do with Wall Street. One has to do with another kind of investor hustler who just is forced to help the government in the 70s bribery situation, bribery of political officials, known as abscam. So in both cases, Wall Street, corruption, cheating, fraud, politics, and in both cases, a surprise shutout. First of all, let's look at what won. 12 Years a Slave. I mean, great movie. Nobody's dissing 12 Years a Slave, but much less controversial to vote for, much less troubling to vote for. And there have been, for example, African-American critiques saying that it's a way for the power structure to pat itself on the back because we don't have slavery anymore, while ignoring the many tasks that lie before us in the civil rights area. And then there's Gravity, which was the all-time feel-good movie for people like the Academy Award voters, because it has those sort of spiritual, non-denominational feel-good themes of, a Father Robert Barron, Catholic priest, wrote a brilliant analysis of all the religious imagery in it, very non-denominational religious film. That aspect of it I really liked a lot, and visually it was amazing. So, those in a sense were predictable choices if people want to feel good about themselves. But Wolf of Wall Street and American Hustle both picked up a lot of awards, and suddenly it stopped. It's not that they were about criminals. After all, The Godfather won. It's not that it was about they reject con artists. I mean, look, The Sting won. But, as I wrote for Campaign for American Future at ourfuture.org, this decade is a little different from the decades where Godfather won or The Sting won. There's one big difference, okay? People have always been ripped off by con artists, right? I mean, but now we've seen the financial crisis of 2008, which was fraud on a massive scale by America's giant banks. The public saw that. They saw nobody punished for it. They're still suffering for it today. The vast majority of Americans are struggling with wage stagnation. They're unemployed or know somebody who's unemployed. They're not working full time when they wish they could be. And there are still millions of underwater houses out there. So the difference is that we live in a decade where fraud has become an almost universal experience for the majority of Americans. So that's something to think about. Maybe that turned the voters off, these two movies. And, Nebraska didn't pick up a win either. Nebraska has that scene in it. I don't think I'm ruining it for those of you who haven't seen it, where Bruce Dern plays an older man who believes he's won, he's got one of those dishonest come-ons, you've won a prize. And he believes it. He believes he's won $1 million. So he goes to Nebraska to collect. And when he finally gets to this mass marketing company, the girl the young woman who works there asks his son, "Does your dad have Alzheimer's?" And the son says, "No, he just believes stuff people tells him." Then my favorite line in the movie, the woman says, "Oh, that's too bad." Because in this society right now, with the banks behaving the way they are, the corporations behaving the way they are, the political system behaving the way it is, to believe what you're being told is a disability. It's a disabling condition. So, hey, look, it's possible that the Oscars were just handed out on merit, all of them, and it may just be that they thought other films were better, but it could also be that people just aren't in the mood for movies about charming, funny, charismatic scam artists. Because let's face it, scams aren't so funny when you've been scammed yourself, and nowadays